Okay, we'll call the meeting to order and stand for the singing of O Canada. Okay, record of attendance. Linda, you're good. Any declarations of conflict of interest, anyone?
Are we dealing with?
When we, yes, we are, so you can, certainly. So when that comes up, you can declare your conflict. Thank you, Councillor. Okay, approval of agenda. Any additions or deletions? I've got, there's an extra sheet on your desk. I put 11A, invitation to Lieutenant Governor. Was there anything else that anybody wanted to add or delete? Good. Motion to approve? Okay. Councillor McLeod and Councillor Barry. Any further discussion? Question's been called. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Approval of minutes. Town Council, March 9th. Councillor Cleveland, Councillor Dennis. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Public hearing, March 9th.
So moved.
Councillor Mooney, Councillor McLeod. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. And Committee of the Whole, March 23rd, please.
So moved. Second.
Deputy Mayor and Council, you got those, Linda? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Update on Lake George, Councillor Hood. Oh, can we get his light on, Linda?
So, Your Worship, since we resumed our career on council, I've been quite interested in working on the issues that have arisen out at Lake George. There's a lot to go over, been over most of it. I think it's important for an update to be given, and I would want to remind the public that in the early 1880s, a private company established a pumping station and pipeline to the town. By the early 1890s, it was inadequate to meet firefighting in the town. A large portion of the downtown burned down in around 1890. And as a result, an impetus arose by citizens that were wishing to incorporate a town so they could get the borrowing power to go out and purchase this company and take over the water system. It did. The town was incorporated, and shortly thereafter they paid $256,000 to buy the company. The company had been granted access to Lake George by the province in a separate statute in 1880 whatever. And so that gave some measure of protection to the Lakeshore watershed to the company, which was inherited by the town when it bought the utility. So later on, they ordered the pipe. It was manufactured in Glasgow, Scotland, shipped over here by ship, and the fittings, valves and so on were made right here in Yarmouth at the Burl and Johnson Ironworks, right down the hill here, which is now Scotia Garden Seafoods. The men installed that pipeline from the town to Lake George in 3 months. Ox teams, picks, axes, and hard backs. Makes you wonder. No excavators, none of the stuff you see on Main Street. It's going to take us probably 5 or 6 months to get done. However, fast forward. In the early 1980s, firefighting was again a problem, not enough water, and we established what was thought to be a state-of-the-art upgraded water distribution system, big pumps and so on out of the lake. We tried to force that water down an old, then becoming almost 100-year-old pipeline, 12-inch line. Long story short, it didn't work. Later on, we had to disassemble it and try to build a proper system of distribution, which we did do. Before that, in 1973, I was appointed town solicitor. My first job was this. Catherine Moses came in to see me maybe 2 days after I was on the job and said, "We have a problem." "What's the problem?" "Well, the municipality is about on the verge of issuing a building permit for a dozen house lots on our lake near the treatment plant. I said, "What?" "Yes." So she asked me to intervene, and I went to saw Mr. Irving Pink, QC, probably the biggest lawyer in town at the time. He was the municipal solicitor, and I got nowhere. So I said, "Well, Mr. Pink, we're going to have to expropriate that." "Oh, you can't do that." Well, we did. We did. The person that had developed the subdivision did have his house underway by then, and we expropriated it, and then we cut a deal with him that, okay, finish the house, but, and the but was, when you're finished with the house, you give us first option to buy it at market price. That householder later on encountered some financial difficulties. It went up for foreclosure. Town bought the place, moved the house off the foundations, and it's located somewhere in downtown Yarmouth to this day, I think. So that was my first real challenge in trying to stick up for the town's watershed. The battle continued to this day. In the late 1980s or early 1990s, the municipality saw fit to grant a building permit to put a sawmill in. Part of the land on that sawmill was located in the Lake George watershed. We were in the midst of trying to develop, under the new Environment Act, new regulations for Lake George to give us more power over the uses that could be conducted in the watershed. That was an ongoing battle with the municipality. It took us 7 or 8 years to get resolved. In the meantime, the sawmill, notwithstanding our request that it not be granted, went ahead. Some years later, the sawmill went broke. After it went broke, the land came up for sale, trustee in bankruptcy, and I'll take responsibility for the town buying that piece of land. We saw that land as a threat to our watershed and to the integrity of the Lake George watershed. And because of the failure of the municipality to heed our request earlier, we were stuck with 2 options. 1, step in, buy it, and clean it up. Or 2, do nothing and just live with the threat that it created. Leave the problem there for the landowners that existed out there in the condition it was. What was the problem out there was simple. They had a system whereby they were soaking the lumber in a pesticide to meet export standards that are required if you're going to process lumber in Nova Scotia and send it overseas. So they had a large tank covered with a roof. They had their sawmill and all the rest. So it was a real threat. So we had discussions with the bankruptcy trustee, and our intention was to try to drive the price down as low as we could and get an environmental audit to determine what exactly needed to be done. We did all that. The trustee went out and had an environmental audit done. As a result of that, we engaged Stantec Engineering, one of the foremost engineering firms in the province and even in the country. And we embarked on an engineered, proper cleanup of that site, even to the point of engaging specialists to clean out and dispose of this tank facility. All of that was done. All of that was done under the supervision of the Department of Environment and signed off at that time by the Department of Environment. Wind the clock forward. I won't wind the clock forward, other than to say, in 1915, a problem developed out there when a decision was taken, an engineering decision was taken to solve a problem at our compost facility. And that problem had arisen because our screener had busted or worn out, and we had 2 very wet summers, and we were bringing in a contract screener, and it was difficult to get all of the impurities. Knives, plastic knives, forks, other bits of plastic bags, that kind of stuff. And so what happened was a decision was taken to try and use this good compost, fully composted compost mixed with some plastic and impurities on the site out there to try to encourage foliage to grow. And that decision was taken, and that was done. Later on, public concern arose, and as a result of that, certain actions were taken. I'm not going to speak any more on that part of it now, except to say that I've thoroughly reviewed the engineering and other studies that have been done in relation to this, and the public should know this. There was not one thing contained in the compost that was put on that site that created any danger, threat, or harm to any person or to the environment. I'm not saying there wasn't an unsightly situation on our land, but I can tell you nothing from our land, from that compost, has hurt anybody. That's what I can tell you that much. So on that topic, the town has been given notice, and now, just recently, in the last 2 weeks, we've actually been, actions been brought against the town. I have met with our liability insurers legal counsel, and both they and I are quite satisfied that the town has a viable defense to the action. It will be vigorously defended, and we'll turn it over to their hands. I'll have nothing more to say about the liability aspects of it at this point because it's before the courts. So I want to update council and the public on this matter because it's something that is of great concern to all of us councillors, and it's something that I have more interest in most of you because I had so many years spent with the water system out there, and I back up what we've done. Just think of it. If we hadn't taken that over, the residents of that place would have nobody to go after except a bankrupt company without the property being remediated. Well, that's my update on that one. I've got another one I'm working on, but it's in flux, and that involves some issues concerning the watershed itself, the former fish hatchery, how much water we're supposed to let out over the dam, and all the rest. And when I get finished with that, I'll have another report, but it's a good one, I'm telling you. Let's just say this, that I've learned that the natural outlet of Lake George was not the fish hatchery brook. It was a brook that ran out of the lake where we get our water, down through the lake system, right through this town. How do you like that one? I also have learned that in terms of it being called salmon fish habitat, or that in fact the fish hatchery was closed because it was unsatisfactory habitat because of the worms that are in Lake George that eat the hearts out of the salmon. They were losing 90% mortality on their salmon that they raised out there. So, yeah, and more. So we've had, the former manager had a look at our dam today, and I've talked to Jeff. I'm going to talk to Dave and to, I was going to say Chad, but I meant Robbie Chetwin. And we think that there's some things that operationally that they may be able to do with the dam to really enhance very simply, the amount of water available to us in the lake. What he tells me is this, believe it or not, 1 foot of water at the top of that lake represents half the volume of water in the entire lake. So if you raise the level of the lake 1 foot, the way it's like a saucer, right? you gain a huge amount of additional water, and the key thing is to keep the stop logs in, and right now we're not doing that. So we're going to follow that up, and I'll have a further report later. Thank you, Your Worship.
Good, thank you. Hit your light, thank you. Okay, Town Hall Cleaning Services. CAO? I say CAO. You okay? Yes. Okay. Guess it's still you. I didn't see your.
Thank you, Your Worship. Invited tenders were requested from 4 local contractors for providing cleaning services for Town Hall. 3 responses were received, and the results are outlined in Chad LeBlanc's memo. And after reviewing the tenders, it is recommended that the contract be awarded to the lowest tenderer, Buff Zone Cleaning Service, Inc., in the amount of $1,825 per month plus HST. That is for your consideration.
Okay, so apples to apples, right? Okay. Go ahead.
Your Worship, I'll
Deputy.
make a motion that the contract be awarded to the lowest tenderer, Buff Zone Cleaning Services, Inc., in the amount of $1,825 per month plus HST.
Moved, second by Councillor Barry. Any more discussion?
Question.
Question's been called. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion carried. Salvation Army parking space. CAO?
Your Worship, as the email indicates, I met with Dave Hobb, who is the manager of the Yarmouth Thrift Store for Salvation Army. They are planning to occupy a building between Toots and the YMCA as their new location. He approached me for the purpose of asking about placement of a recycling container where materials would be put and then hauled away. They don't own any land behind their building. The land actually is part of the Toots property. What they're asking, because we own the parking lot behind the YMCA, the request is that they be able to use,
Keep going.
they be able to use one parking space, the one closest to the back of their building, for the purpose of placing the recycling container, which would be emptied from time to time, but he's assured me it would be clean.
Okay. Go ahead, Councillor.
Good idea. Why not? Let's do it. Let them use it. So moved.
Moved and seconded. So discussion? Anyone? Question's been called. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Go ahead, CAO.
So, Your Worship, we would request the solicitor to prepare an agreement similar to what we did across the street just last month for another downtown business. So it's a license to use that portion of the property
Okay.
with conditions.
Good. Beyond that, solicitor?
I'm on that.
Okay. Memorandum of Understanding, Alternative Resource Energy Authority, CAO.
Your Worship, we've spoken about this before. The idea here is that the province is expected to do a call for proposals for solar voltaic energy production to feed into the grid. There's a group of towns that are very heavily invested in wind energy, and so they have the professional expertise to put together the proposals, the bids, to do the financial analysis, and they've offered to partner with other municipalities who are interested in getting into the solar bid process. So the limit per project is 50,000 kilowatts, which is fairly small. And so the economies of scale work when you have the one party providing the professional expertise for many. So this MOU basically commits that we'll explore our options when the terms are released, and they'll help us do the analysis and determine if there's a viable project on any of our properties. So one of the criteria we know is that there must be a building on the property, and so you might think about buildings such as Mariner Center, where you may be able to install a project on a roof, or even a former landfill site where you would maybe be able to install it at ground level. So we may have variety of options, but they have the expertise to help us with the analysis and putting together the bid. And so we're asking for your approval to enter into the MOU in anticipation of that call for proposals.
So you're looking for a motion to okay this? Go ahead, Councillor.
Your Worship, I serve on the Green Energy Committee. It's a valuable project. I think that it's good work, and I would like to make that motion.
Okay. Moved, second by Councillor Dennis. Any more discussion?
Question.
Question's been called. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. This was one of our top 4 priorities, was it? Is this? Yeah. Good. To be able to check those off the list. Okay, appointment of citizens.
Your Worship, will make a motion that we do this process at the next committee of the whole.
Good. Second. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? CAO?
Nope, go ahead with that.
Any discussion? Question's been called. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Okay. Birthplace of Maud Lewis sign. Okay, go ahead before that.
Yeah, so there was another item there regarding the committee of the whole policy, and it has to do with the taxi committee bylaw. We've been unable to through our recruitment efforts for the last couple of years, recruit any industry interest in serving on that committee, and unless we have committee interest, we don't have a quorum under that bylaw in order to consider amendments to our taxi bylaw or our rules and regulations. And so the recommendation for the immediate future is that we simply change the bylaw or amend the bylaw to make the committee of the whole the taxi advisory committee until such time as there appears to be interest from the industry to re-engage. And so if you would consider that, and you can consider it the committee of the whole, we would then proceed to prepare the amendments for the May council meeting for first reading.
Idea. Go ahead, Deputy.
Your Worship, I'll make a recommendation that council direct staff to prepare amendments to the Taxi Advisory Committee, naming Committee of the Whole as the Advisory Committee.
Second by Councillor McLeod. Go ahead, Councillor Hood.
Councillor, the motion on the floor, so I'll speak to it. For many years, we did have an active tax committee. I chaired it, and others, probably Jim done. And here's what I'll give you this caution. If you take it on, this is a radical change because the taxi committee used to be usually one councillor and a number of members of various taxi companies. And we would have our bylaw enforcement officer as advisory on the thing. I'll guarantee you this, if we do our job, which there needs to be a job done, I think, in my respectful opinion, and we start beefing up the taxi bylaw, maybe even considering putting in requirements that they have barriers or any of that kind of stuff, or even meters, all that stuff, there will be an organization come forward and you will have volunteers. So if you make it so that you don't have citizen volunteers, you may find yourselves having to reverse yourselves down the road.
You may find yourself what?
You may find yourselves reversing yourselves to allow citizens on the committee sometime down the road here. So I just issue that caution. I hate to vote nay on a motion. I'm trying to get along with everybody these days, but
is that, I think that's the purpose, is that the purpose of what we're doing, just to move it along now so that we can go after, or, you know, attract citizens?
well, so maybe the CAO can correct me, but right now it'll simply make the committee of the whole the taxi committee.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah, so Your Worship, the intention is, as the councillor has stated, and fully expect the same outcome. Fully expect that this will be an interim measure until the taxi industry re-engages.
All right. As long as we understand that, I'm
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
I will be speaking in favor of the motion.
Good. Me too. Thank you, Counselor. Okay, any further discussion? Question's been called. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Birthplace of Maud Lewis sign. Go ahead, CAO.
Your Worship, we received correspondence which I circulated to council. It came from a member of the community concerning, I guess, proclaiming proudly through signage on our highways, on our 100 series highways, that in fact Yarmouth is the birthplace of Maud Lewis. Currently, there's a Hollywood production with big name stars that celebrate her story, and certainly that will be seen throughout North America and the world. And we're rather humble about our claim on Maud, and this citizen believes that we should be more obvious about it and celebrate it more. So bring that forward for your consideration.
Okay, so go ahead, Councillor.
Well, I'd like to say that this actually is about the least we should do. We should do much, much more. There's huge tourism potential in the fact that Maud Lewis was born here. Her abilities. I spoke with Councillor Dennis before this, saying that, to be honest with you, I was surprised that when we did the Maud houses a few years back, that there wasn't more done at that point. But this is a good starting point, and I think much, much more should be done. There's real potential here.
So who does it?
So, Your Worship, in order to...
You can keep that
sorry.
on, Wade, if you're, I didn't mean for you to turn it off, just our conversation, you're good.
So I have had some discussions in the past with TIR about these 100 series signs, that you see sort of or welcoming people to different regions and communities. And there's a cost to them, and what you do is you basically commission somebody to come up with a design, and they have a level of approval. If you want it to be reflective, then it limits your color selections, but you can have it reflective, as some of them are. And ultimately, you pay a price. There's a value, and I think don't quote me on this, but it might be in the area of $15,000 per sign, and they do the installation. So
Okay.
a couple things we would need to consider is the cost of the design is on us, and we'd have to confirm the cost of the actual sign and installation with TIR.
Okay,
Your Worship,
go ahead.
I know, I'll let Councillor Cleveland finish his thought, and then I'll just
Yeah.
have a...
That's fine. My next question was, actually, what kind of a timeline are we looking at with this? If we instigated this or began a process, be it tonight or some other time, what are we looking at in terms of a time between now and then? Because I've heard before that it's not necessarily the easiest thing in the world to get these things up.
yeah, and I think Councillor Durkee in the municipality went after a couple signs, and I think she's gotten them, so it's doable. So I don't know if the motion would be to direct staff to look into next steps?
Ask for a staff report.
Staff report.
Investigate the process and the cost, and come back to hopefully it's
Okay, so hopefully committee of the whole, if they're able to do that. So do you want to make that motion, Councillor Cleveland? Yeah, he's gonna speak to it. Well,
I'll let
Councillor Mooney,
Councillor-
okay, go ahead. I keep calling you Councillor, but.
So are we talking something on the scale of the signs that we have outside town? Well, we're going to have to put this to budget, aren't we? I mean, those are like north of $20,000 when I did it 10 years ago, so they're probably $30,000 or $40,000 now, expect, installed.
So,
And you're going to put one up on either way into town? I got to ask the question, because then you'll be pushing $75,000, $100,000 probably.
yeah. So the motion would be, who made the motion?
I'm okay with the motion, because it staffs to look into it, but I want to
It's
understand
just to research the cost.
the scale of what we're doing. So, and CAO's indicated he understands council's thinking about something of similar size, and yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, there might be more than one option. Deputy?
And I was just thinking, kind of one step past the signage between the 101 and the 103 is what can we do as a community to honor or to self-proclaim? Because I know you go down through Queens County and you'll see the Maud Lewis something, then you'll go to Digby, where I think it was Judge Williford's son, had something to do with the Maud Lewis. Took the original.
Okay, just before you get into Digby.
Yeah, they got that.
Maybe a mile or so, is a little
Latticed.
replica of the houses there. That's where
Yes.
she lived.
Yeah.
So,
I think, and we had the conversation, I think Councillor Dennis was sitting at the table through the Communities in Bloom when we named the trail between Parade Street and Stars Road as the Maud Lewis Trail. And I thought at one time we were going to engage the high school or the art classes in southwestern Nova Scotia maybe to come up and do something with the rocks or do, you know, have a Maud Lewis, maybe a Maud Lewis themed chalk outlines on the pavement between, you know, Parade Street and things. So I think there's going to be, besides the signage, there should be another step with community engagement, not only within the town of Yarmouth, but within the region, because we all know that she was born here in Yarmouth. She was born, I guess she lived her early life down on Hawthorne Street. We had a proposal before, I think, from an individual that was going to cost us some money with, I think, painting the street down there. Might have been in the last 4 or 5 years, but I think we got Wayne out here, and it's an excellent letter, and it's everybody's trying to lay claim to her, but we do have a claim that she was born here in Yarmouth. And I think, I don't know what entity that we use to, what's the next one that we use? Do we go through Communities in Bloom to come up with a theme? Do we go to?
yeah. So when Councillor Cleveland was saying more, like,
Yeah,
more,
what's the
that
next-
was my question, like, but where does it land?
Yeah,
That's
is it
the
a town
question.
council initiative? Do we go out and set up a
can't.
citizen group to come in and do it, or do we involve people like?
Citizen advisory would be good.
Yes, or do we go out and involve people like the Art Society, the Western Gallery, Nova Scotia Art Branch, you know, which is kind of like the folk art of Nova Scotia now? How do we, what's the process? Maybe we should, I'll make we ever have a motion on the floor?
We don't have anything on the floor yet, so let's
I
take
think maybe
care.
we do the first one maybe
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we put the signage for Maud Lewis on the 101, 103 to budget, subject to
We're to staff report.
staff report to see the cost. And then maybe after that, I'll make a motion that we
Okay.
invite maybe Angela Collier from the Western Branch of Nova Scotia Art Gallery to come in to advise us maybe on what we can do our next step.
Yep. So keep your light on. So first of all, I need a seconder. Okay, thank you. All right, and you're on.
So Deputy Mayor,
You're not on yet, though.
is your motion?
No, but you're almost. Councillor Cleveland.
I think the motion is, Councillor Hood, is to put the signage request, get staff to come up with the budget, with the costing of the signage, and see what that is, maybe the next committee of the whole. There might be a better idea, and then see what it is.
I was thinking of that, so maybe subject to whatever Angela has, to you know, the art
Yes.
gallery people, would be an extra
Yeah.
subject too.
Yeah.
And I just thought of another thing, which was, you know, we've done all these plaques on Water Street and so on. That could be something that you would put on Hawthorne near the CAN building, so.
Yeah.
Got a bigger idea than that.
Yeah, so do I.
You mean,
We're thinking the same thing, aren't
does it
we?
involve
I think
doors
we
and
are.
windows?
For something.
But it-
Okay?
Does it involve doors and windows?
No. Yeah, it does.
Well, it does,
Yeah, it
yeah.
does.
Maybe a whole house.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I also think that, that Yasta could be a part of that as well, which I'd like to engage.
Yeah. So exactly. So that's, we just need to figure out where, where this lands.
Yes.
Okay, so let's take care of the first motion first, which was to get a report from staff with regard to costs. Okay, so you moved it. Who seconded it? Wade seconded. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. And Deputy, you were going to make a...
Motion that we invite Angela Collier from the Western Nova Scotia Art Gallery to next committee of the whole meeting, or the one that she can make.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Question's been called. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Yes. Thank you, Wayne.
Thank you, Wayne.
We'll call you when we're fundraising. Okay. Cancer unit. Counselor Dennis, do you want to take care of that one?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Do you want me to speak to the motion first, or just read the motion?
No, you can just speak to it. The Minister of Health, that's
Okay.
not the Minister of Health.
What? It's not the Minister of Health? Okay. So is it supposed to be the Nova Scotia Health Authority or Department of Health and Wellness? Health and Wellness? Okay. So I've been in Halifax quite a bit at the hospital there, and it was actually one of the oncologist doctors there that brought it to my attention that we have a great hospital here in Yarmouth, but we offer chemotherapy here, but we don't offer radiation. And so he thought that as a town councillor that I should bring it to council to see if we could stand behind the hospital and seeing if there's a way that we could offer that treatment here. And also being in Halifax, there's so many people there from Yarmouth and surrounding areas at the lodge that gives, for instance, and speaking with them, some people can't afford to, for what it costs to be in Halifax. If you go, the cancer patient themselves can stay for free. But if you're sick and have cancer, you'd like someone with you.
We're the biggest users.
Exactly.
We are the biggest users.
So it's like $65 a night for that person that's with you. So that's a big chunk of change for people who can't afford. And some people actually don't get the treatment that they actually need because they can't afford the travel, the expenses to be there and everything. So I'm hoping that Mayor Mood, you will write a letter to the Department of Health and Wellness, or the Health Authority, whichever, that priority consideration be given to establishing a full cancer unit here in Yarmouth.
Good.
And I was also wondering if my motion passed, that maybe we could ask the municipality of Argyle and the municipality of Yarmouth to also write a letter.
Good? Exactly.
Yes.
Okay. So moved and seconded. Any discussion? Question's been called. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion carried. Linda, can you make a note for me to contact, or we'll contact the rest of the units? Good. Thank you, Councillor Dennis. Reports, Council Advisory, Committee of the Whole, Deputy.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll make a motion that David Oley, Town Crier, be granted a leave of absence from the dropping of the writ until Election Day in the next provincial election.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Question's been called. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion carried.
Your Worship, I move that the Town of Yarmouth install the dog park culvert subject to our budget deliberations.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Oh. Yes, okay. Yep. Okay. Any discussion? Question's been called. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Contrary? Motion carried.
Your Worship, I'll move
Come on
that.
back.
Your Worship, I'll move that a letter of condolences be sent to former Mayor Marge McCachran on the passing of her husband Gerald McCachran.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Question's been called. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried.
Your Worship, I move that Town Council meet with the Minister of Municipal Affairs, Zach Churchill, regarding roles and responsibilities of the returning officer.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Question's been called. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion carried.
Your Worship, I move that staff provide a report on repairs to breaks and sewer lines on taxpayers' properties and look into revising the sewer connection bylaw.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All
Question.
those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion carried.
Your Worship, I move that the May Town Council meeting be changed to May the 18th, 2017, due to the UNSM Spring Workshop being held from May 10th to 12th.
So moved, seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion carried. Thank you, Deputy.
Thank you.
Citizen Advisory, Planning Advisory Committee, Councillor McLeod. Yep. Certainly. Thank you, Councillor.
From our public hearing of earlier this evening, there are two motions. I move to amend the land use bylaw to permit the establishment of a microbrewery at 270 Main Street as outlined in Morris's report.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Question?
Question's been called. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? That's, yes, so it says 270 Main Street, but it's a zone. It's the C1 zone.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Phil. Second motion, I move to amend the land use bylaw to rezone the town-owned property located at 28 Jarvis Road from comprehensive development to open space as outlined in our planner's report.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Question's been called. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion carried.
From
And-
our
Yeah,
from our-
April 11th.
Planning Advisory Committee meeting of 2 days ago, just one item. I move to proceed to a public hearing in order to consider, and if deemed advisable, amend the land use bylaw to rezone 29 Stars Road from open space to general commercial as outlined in our planner's report.
Moved and seconded.
I'm back in my chair.
Any discussion? Question's been called. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion carried. Okay, thank you, Counselor. So we've got reports for information. Any questions for committee chairs? We good? And additions. So the one addition I had was invitation to the Lieutenant Governor. So I've just been contacted by the IODE, Shirley Bradshaw, and they were thinking it's Canada's 150th, perhaps extending an invitation to the Lieutenant Governor to come, and we would sit down and maybe pull together a tea or some type of event for the Lieutenant Governor to come and visit for our 150th. So
Nice.
I guess the motion would read, in consultation with IODE. Go ahead, Deputy.
I'll make a motion in consultation with the IODE. We invite the Lieutenant Governor to the town of Yarmouth.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Question's been called. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion carried. Approval of invoices.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Question.
Question's been called. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. And the date of next meeting, we already took care of. I think that's the 18th. Linda? Yeah, 18th of May. And we have in camera, so a motion to,
Motion to go in camera, Your Worship.
thank you. Motion to go in.
Okay. I'm gone from Monday for the next 6
Hi,
days.
Mitch.